What are the three main inquiries in a religious R1 non-immigrant visa? Hi, I'm Jim Hacking, immigration lawyer practicing law throughout the United States out of our office here in St. Louis, Missouri. I had a recent consult with a small church in outstate Missouri. They had been banging their head against the wall for the last year and a half trying to bring a person to come work at their church. And I think their experience is very illustrative of the kinds of hurdles and problems that we see in religious R1 non-immigrant visas. So sometimes churches, synagogues, mosques, or any other kind of religious institution want to bring a spiritual leader to the United States to work at their institution of higher learning. And the way that they do that is with an R1 temporary non-immigrant visa. The visa can be good for several years and you can renew it as well. But generally, you have to remember that aliens, again, of course, are not authorized to work in the United States without authorization. And if they want to work as a reverend or a minister or an imam or a rabbi, they have to get permission from USCIS to do that work. And the application that's filed is an I-129, and it's a religious visa, R1 visa. That's the name of the visa. And you have to know that these cases have been subjected to a lot of fraud lately. And because of the fraud that's been involved in these religious visas, the USCIS has really started pushing back. The State Department has as well. And really, you're really going to face a very high hurdle. Religious visas are one of the hardest visas for us to get. And so you really have to put a lot of work into them. They're subjected to a lot of scrutiny. The Immigration Service often and almost always sends back very onerous requests for evidence, and it's really a ton of work. Other than an asylum case, it's one of the most work-intensive visas that we file, and unfortunately we have to charge accordingly. It's sort of a tricky situation because sometimes religious institutions don't have a lot of money, but that doesn't change the fact that there's just a ton of work that has to go into a religious visa. And the experience of this small church that contacted us from outstate Missouri sort of illustrates that. They had tried to bring a man from Uganda to the United States to work as a music director at their church. And so let me tell you what the main three inquiries are in a R1 visa so that we can then see what happened in this particular case with the church. One inquiry is whether or not the position is a ministerial position. The United States Citizenship and Immigration Service wants to make sure that the visa is going to be awarded to somebody who is in a spiritual position. You can't get an R1 visa for a clerical position or for a support position. It has to be ministerial in nature. It has to be religiously based. And so one of the main things is the job position itself a ministerial position that warrants an R1? Another inquiry is whether this particular person, the applicant, has the educational background and the experiential background to be able to perform the job. In other words, the Immigration Service wants to know whether the person has been trained religiously to lead the flock, the spiritual group that are members of the church or the synagogue or the mosque. And so it's really important that the person have the credentials. If they don't have the credentials, it's very unlikely that the R1 is going to be granted. So then the third inquiry is whether or not the religious institution itself is a religious organization that makes enough money and has enough members and is significant enough to be able to afford to pay the minister or the spiritual leader the right salary. So there's a lot of inquiry that goes into this, and this is especially true if the church is relatively small or relatively new or relatively poor. The Immigration Service really wants to make sure that people aren't starting fake churches or fake religious institutions in order to get people visas, and that's sort of some of the abuse that we've seen, and that's why there's really been a lot of pushback on that. So in this particular situation, the church had failed to provide a determination letter from the Internal Revenue Service showing that they were tax exempt. That's a real problem. Another problem was that the position was not necessarily ministerially based. They had wanted the man from Uganda to come to work as a music director, and that makes it hard. So they spent a year and a half on this, and it ultimately got denied. Now, they had called the United States Citizenship and Immigration Service. They had made lots of inquiries into the State Department as to questions that they had, but the one thing they hadn't done was hired an immigration attorney. So this is a real problem. It really makes it hard. You can't rely on information that you receive from the government, and it really takes an experienced immigration attorney to be able to put one of these cases together. So here they are. They've spent about $4,000 on the process. They've had a lot of headache and heartache in trying to get this thing approved. And now a year and a half later, they're no further along than they were when they started. So I don't know if we're going to be able to help them. I told them that it sounded like a pretty tough case. I told them that I think it had a less than a 50% chance of success. And so we'll see what they decide to do. But you have to understand, in any R1 religious visa context, that these cases are very hard to win. They're subjected to a lot of scrutiny, and I think this story sort of bears that out. If you have any questions about an R1 visa, or if you're a church or synagogue or mosque or any other kind of religious institution that wants to sponsor a religious leader for a visa, be sure to give us a call at 314-961-8200. You can email us at info@hackinglawpractice.com. Please be sure to like us on Facebook and on YouTube. And if you want to subscribe to our YouTube channel, you'll be alerted whenever we send out a new video. Thanks a lot and have a great day.